everyone. Welcome back to English Champion. On this episode, I will continue the endless struggle of trying to understand what Gen Z and other young people are constantly whining about. So I don't know if this will help, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. And the reason I wanted to talk about it was I saw this article the other day from this young lady, and I just thought, wow, they just don't get it. And I know I'm old, and I know, those of us who are Gen X and older, we lived in a different world and we have a different perspective. But I really wish young people would just take some advice here, and maybe things would be a little better for them. So let's dive into this short piece. This is more of a slideshow article, so each thing had like a paragraph. So let's take a look. So the title of the article is "I'm Gen Z, and this is why we're all so anxious and depressed." We're all so anxious and depressed, she says. All right, so here it starts. I'm 26 and recently started a full-time job as a content creator for a nonprofit organization. Getting this job means I'm no longer financially stressed as I have been since graduating. I've also moved into a 2-bedroom flat with my lovely boyfriend, and bursts of warm spring air show that sunnier days are ahead. Everything seems perfect. Why then do I feel so anxious and depressed? Why do I wake up each day and feel the need to pop an antidepressant, of which I've tried many different kinds, to numb the thundercloud of chronic anxiety that lingers above my head? Why do I constantly feel like I'm in a pressure cooker of expectations that could bubble over at any moment? I'm not alone. Studies suggest that mental health problems among young adults have been steadily rising over the past 2 decades. In 2000, 1 in 4 millennials, who were young adults at the time, reported experiencing common mental health problems. Today, it's 1 in 3 among Gen Z, 18 to 24-year-olds, who report these symptoms. All right, so that's just the first paragraph. So the first thing that I noticed from this is, and what I always think, and I've said this before, but this is really helpful to think this way, okay, is just take a minute and imagine what people from other decades or centuries would say about what you're talking about, okay? You need to have a little bit of historical perspective. This is why it's so good to study literature, why it's good to read history, some psychology. You need to know about people and you need to know about the world, because once you do, things don't seem so scary because things have always been worse. So when she says, she has a full-time job. So imagine someone from a previous era, all right, maybe growing up in the Depression or whenever, okay? And they ask you, hey, do you have a job? And you go, well, yeah. You're like, but I'm really, really anxious and depressed. And they go, well, do you have full-time work? Well, yeah. Do you have a roof over your head? Yeah. Do you make enough from your job to basically cover your basic bills at least? Yeah. Do you have someone in your life who loves you and you love them back? Yeah. Are you living in a place that is currently at war, where basically every night you wonder if you're going to be able to wake up in the morning because there's bombing all around you? No. Is there any danger that you might starve in the next week? No. What in the world are you anxious and depressed about then? You have everything you need and more than what any people from any other era have ever had. What in the world are you anxious and depressed about? So this is what I always, when I would talk to my students about, especially college kids who would have these problems, I'm like, you have every advantage in the world. What in the world are you complaining about? What are you so anxious about? She's going to talk a little bit more about that here coming up. But where she starts with this, she has a full-time job. She's not financially stressed. She graduated from school, so she has a high level of education. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment with someone who loves her. Sounds like a pretty nice life. When I was that age, I wish I had that kind of life. I didn't. Or when I was recently graduating college anyway, I didn't. I lived by myself. I was 1,200 miles away from anybody. I didn't know anybody. I was working 18-hour days, and I was, trying to save as much money as I could. But, I had to pay my own rent and all my own insurance, and I wasn't married or in love or anything. I didn't have anybody. I was literally by myself, far away from anything. And yet, I got through it. It was fine. It was stressful in that I had a lot of responsibilities, and I was a teacher, so people relied on me every day, and I had to be prepared, and I had to look like I know what I was doing and all that. But yeah, you pay your bills and you just live your life and you get through it. That's just all it is. It's not, you're not anything new. So that's the other thing that kind of the historical perspective is these young people, they don't seem to understand that, like, they think they're unique. You think you're special. You're not. This is completely normal. This is what everyone has always done. Okay? Everyone has always felt this way. And we're going to get into a little bit more of the specific things that she's feeling here. I'm not really sure what exactly these symptoms are when she says that 33% of Gen Z have these symptoms. Like, what? You're you feel a little bit of stress because you want to impress your boss. Again, totally normal. You're a little stressed because you've overextended your credit card bill and you're just barely going to be able to pay the minimum this month. Like, yeah, welcome to everyone doing that. You recently broke up with your boyfriend, so you're a little bit sad. Like, yeah, people have been doing that forever. What are these symptoms exactly? Because unless you've gone to a doctor, a medical doctor, and have had your like neurochemicals tested, what are your symptoms exactly? Because you just saying I'm anxious and stressed isn't enough. Because everyone feels those things at some point. That doesn't mean you have a mental health problem. It means you're a human being. It means you're normal. So you just deal with that. And I'm going to talk about some ways to deal with that. But one of those is what I tell my students and what I tell my athletes when they're feeling anxious or nervous before a big game or nervous before a big test, or, they're on the borderline with their grade and they're wondering if they're going to pass. And so it's down to one final paper they have to write. Like, their tension is rising. And I talk to them about how stress and excitement, nervousness and excitement are actually very closely related in the brain. All right. So a couple things we can take from stress, young people, is that one, when you are feeling stress or what you think is stress, which you are calling your mental health problem, what that really means is you actually care about it, which is a good sign, actually. So don't take it as a negative. If you're feeling nervous or stressful, you should think, well, my body's giving me some feedback that shows that I actually care about this. Because if there's things in life that go on and you're like, whatever, you don't get nervous about it, well, that literally tells you you're not caring about it. Okay. And so the fact that you actually do get stressed, you can turn that into a positive. You can say, well, this means I care, means I want to be good at this job, or I want to do well on this test, or whatever that is, that you do care. Okay, well, good. Well, then what can we do? Well, you can just dig in and prepare like crazy so that the chance of failure is pretty small. If it's a school situation, you go meet with your professor, you do a bunch of drafts, you go through practice tests, you pound it out, you do everything you can to prepare for when that time comes, that test or that paper or presentation, whatever you have to do. The anxiety will drop when you're more prepared. So maybe you're stressed out because you're not as prepared as you should be. That could be. Maybe your boss is going to expect you to do something at your work and you haven't really done a good job lately. And so now you're worried about that. Well, do a better job. So if you're feeling that, one, that you care. Two, that if you just prepare more and do more work, it will probably alleviate some of that stress because, you'll feel more confident in what you're doing. And then, like I said, three, what I do with my students and players all the time is the part of your brain that's dealing with this is very closely related to excitement. And so you can actually just tell yourself, hey, I'm not stressed. What you do is, what I do with my players is put a smile on your face. Actually make your body make a smile. Okay? Oftentimes your mental response is tied to how your body is acting. So if your body is acting like it's happy and excited and energetic and ready to go, then your brain will actually follow suit. So instead of moping around with your shoulders slumped and your face in a frown and going, oh, I'm just so anxious and depressed, force yourself to put a smile on your face. And what I do with my kids, and it's kind of funny because they actually look forward to this now, that whenever they're feeling nervous, they all look at each other and go, they put a smile on their face and they go, I'm excited. All right. So it's sort of funny. So it relieves the tension before a big game or whatever, but also it helps them to transition that feeling of nervousness or anxiousness to one of, all right, let's go. I'm excited. Let's do this. I'm ready to get out there and perform. So there's a couple ways you can address this that are very simple. They're free. All you have to do is just do them, and your levels of anxiety will start to drop. All right. So just from off the top here, this is an easy problem to fix. Unless you have a truly serious neurochemical problem, you're just doing this to yourself. All right, Gen Z folks, I'm sorry to tell you that. And I know you want our sympathy here from us old people, but this is the reality. Okay. You just need to figure out some strategies for how you get over this and get on with it. That's what you do. So then she gets into some work issues. She says recent figures show that 1 million young people aged 16 to 24 in the UK, she's British here, obviously, and I would assume the numbers are similar here in America, are currently NEET, the abbreviation for not in education, employment, or training. I can relate, having stepped away from work multiple times to protect my mental health. Really? So again, have a sense of perspective here, okay? At no time in my life, until I got much older with a lot more experience and wisdom and money in my bank account, did I ever feel like I could walk away from work to deal with my personal life. Like, think how privileged you are that you can step away from work multiple times to protect your mental health. All right, again, historical perspective. Do you think people in the Great Depression could step away from work for a while to deal with their stress levels of being hungry and poor? No. What did they do? They got to work because that's what they had to do to survive. All right? Your mental health, if you're using it this way, this is like a privilege. All right? This isn't reality. No one with true struggles in life, those who are really hanging on by a thread, those who have legitimate reasons to be stressed or depressed, can take time away to go deal with that. All right? Most of us have to just keep ourselves alive and go to work and earn money and pay our bills and keep a roof over our head and put food in our mouth and take care of our families. And like, we have to do real things. We can't step away from work for a while. She continues, navigating adulthood feels overwhelming for my generation with constant pressure to hustle and prove ourselves. While I have now secured a full-time job, the mental toll of economic uncertainty and my own perfectionism remains. Okay, so a couple questions. She talks about this pressure, constant pressure to hustle and prove ourselves. Where exactly is this pressure coming from? Are you putting it on yourself? Because you don't really have any pressure. You have a full-time job. You have someone who loves you. You have a roof over your head. What other pressures are you dealing with exactly? I'm not saying there aren't any, but like right now you haven't given us any. So if you have true pressures in your life, please share and I'll try to sympathize with you. But right now you haven't given us any. So where is this pressure coming from? Is it from someone else? Because you don't have to listen to other people. If someone's pressuring you and it's not something you want to do, like you ignore them. Okay. They don't matter. If it's something online, like you feel pressure from social media or something silly like that, again, you can block all that out. Like that stuff doesn't matter. So again, are you doing this to yourself? Like, are you listening to people you shouldn't be listening to? Are you seeing things online you shouldn't be paying attention to that mostly aren't real? Like, where is this pressure coming from exactly? Because again, sounds like your life is pretty good. There's also an element here of, I've noticed this a lot in recent years. This is kind of a humble brag part of people's persona, where they might say they have a legitimate problem where they're like, "Oh, I'm super stressed," and then you'll ask, "Well, why?" And they'll go, "Well, I'm just such a perfectionist." It's like, "Oh, really? Oh, you're so good that how good you are is making you stressed." All right, like you're just looking for people to not even respect you, just like sympathize with you for things that don't need your sympathy. Okay. Oh, I'm just so stressed because I want everything to be perfect. Like that's not real stress. Okay. People who are stressed are hanging on by a thread. Okay. Perfection is not their concern. If you're truly in a desperate situation, again, like think of hunger or something like that. If you're truly hungry, you haven't eaten for a week. You're not looking for a gourmet meal. You're not trying to be perfect. You're scraping together anything you can because that's what'll help you survive. That's desperation. That's stress. All right. Being stressed about being a perfectionist, you're just bragging and you're hoping that people also, while also thinking how great you are because you're a perfectionist, you also want their sympathy by saying, well, it's just causes such a mental toll on me. Like you're trying to have it both ways. You're trying to be great, but you also want to be a victim. So see how that works out? That's not something people can sympathize with very easily, because either way, you're a victim. Like if things don't go well, you're like, well, look, I told you things are rough for us. I'm a victim. But if things are going well, you can figure out a way to spin it around where you're like, yeah, but I'm just such a perfectionist. Nothing's ever good enough. Like, oh, so you get to be a victim both ways. I see. That works out very conveniently for you. All right, I get it. My struggles, she says, reflect the broader challenges Gen Z faces, where workplace anxiety and fear of judgment make holding down a job feel insurmountable. That is, if you can even get your foot on the ladder in the first place, with AI becoming an increasing threat to graduate jobs. Okay, first of all, I'm going to speak very generally here. I know there are certain jobs that are very high stakes. There are dramatic consequences for failure. You know, if you work at NASA or something like that, like, okay, there's some pressure there to, what did she say? Fear of judgment or something. Like, there could be serious consequences if you screw up. Almost every job in America, especially for young people, no one's really caring. Okay, most people and most companies, most bosses, they're kind of like, yeah, you're young. I gave you a low level job to start you out. As long as you don't screw up something that destroys my company, like, just do your work and it'll be fine. All right. Most things get kind of worked out. You'll get better at your job. There's no reason to be super fearful of judgment because, to be honest with you, especially if you work at a sort of a larger corporation, no one's paying attention to you. All right, there's nothing to fear. There's no anxiety. Like, no one even knows you exist in most places. Okay, so you don't have to think so highly of yourself that, oh my gosh, I'm this linchpin of my company that if everyone's going to be looking to me. Again, there are certain 26-year-olds who have those kinds of jobs. This young lady doesn't. Okay, as she said, she's a content creator for a nonprofit. Like, the world's going to go on spinning. Trust me, whether you do a fantastic job or just a good job. Just be relatively competent. Again, don't do anything catastrophically that destroys your company, and you'll be fine because that's just the way the world is. No one's watching you that closely. So just do good work. That's all you have to do. Maybe part of this also, she talks about the working world here, is look, I'm going to judge the name of that job, but like, what exactly is a content creator? I know I'm old, but like, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe the fact that you wake up every day and you go, well, I have to go create content. Like, is that something you're passionate about? Is that something that you're really excited about? Is that something that you feel like you're really contributing something to the world by creating content? I don't even know what that means. And other people have talked about this for the last couple of years and made videos about it, but like, maybe that's part of it. Maybe the job you have isn't meaningful enough to you. And so you wake up kind of depressed, or you're anxious because you feel unfulfilled in some way. Maybe that's what it is. And so even though it's a full-time job and it's paying your bills and you're not, as she said, having strong financial stress right now, yeah, maybe it's wearing on you mentally because you actually don't like what you're doing. Maybe you should go find something else to do. Again, the idea of creating content, like, I know what people think that means, but you need a different perspective on that. So, for example, I'm making a video and you could say, well, I'm making content right now, but I don't think of it that way. I think, what am I doing when I'm doing this right now? Well, I'm teaching. That's what I do in my life. I teach people stuff. All right. I'm informing people about things they didn't know previously. I'm, maybe not this video, but other videos, I'm trying to provide something that's moderately entertaining. Like, I hope you keep watching. That's what I'm doing. So when you go to your work every day for your nonprofit, are you thinking, oh, I got to go create content today? Or are you thinking of it as, I get to go teach people things today. I get to go inform people about something they don't know about. And that's going to be really cool that I get that chance to do that. I get to use my expertise to teach the world about this organization I work for or this problem we're trying to solve. And that's really important. And so I care a lot about it. I can't wait to get to work today. Or I'm going to create something entertaining that maybe people will get a laugh out of, or it'll touch them emotionally, or it'll inspire them. That's what I'm going to go create today. Instead of saying, I'm a content creator, like, that sounds like the most boring thing in the world. Why would you even want to do that? So maybe change your perspective on your job, and who knows, maybe that'll make you less anxious and depressed. You gotta have something that I don't like the word passion all the time because, you can be passionate about things that aren't really that important, but you got to pick something that's really important to you. Is this job you have really that important? And if so, okay, great. Then dive into that. Put on a smiling face and say, I'm excited to go to work today. It doesn't even matter how much they pay me. I just want to do this amazing thing because I love it so much. Just do that. Now, I'm not saying that every job has to be like that, but you need to have some overarching goal here. I went through periods in my life where I wasn't doing what I wanted to do, but I also needed to put a roof over my head and pay my bills. But I knew that, okay, this is going to be short term. I'm going to do this for 6 months. I'm going to do this for 2 years, whatever it was, because after this, I'm now going to have these qualifications, this level of education, this level of experience, whatever, to go do this thing that I actually do care about. And so even if in the present you're frustrated or stressed or anxious, looking ahead to your ultimate goal, that is what should get you excited. Okay? When I was in the drudgery of graduate school, where all I'm doing is reading thousands of pages of research and books and writing thousands of pages, yeah, that wasn't very fun. It caused a lot of stress. I was by myself. My wife was thousands of miles away. It was very expensive. All I was doing was working on my studies, and it was not enjoyable. But I knew, okay, I got to go through this to get to this thing, and that's what I really care about. So I'm going to suffer for a little while because that's my goal. And so whatever anxiousness or stress or depression I was feeling when I was miserable in my tiny, studio apartment dorm room thing, all by myself with just books around me and papers due every single day, I just kept thinking, this is short term. I'm just going to get through this. I'm going to do as well as I can. But this is all for a larger purpose later on because that's what I actually care about. So this isn't forever. I'm just going to get through it and go to the next thing. And that's what you do. So there's a way to change your environment a bit here. Maybe it's change your own job title. Tell yourself you actually do something different. And you take that perspective to work with you each day, and maybe that will reduce the anxiety and the fear of judgment or whatever, and create some excitement and create a sense of purpose in your life so that maybe you won't be so stressed out. It's worth a shot. She says, since school, I've soaked up praise like a sponge. A simple pat on the back for completing a project became a form of validation that shaped how I defined my worth. But in professional settings where the stakes feel much higher, I find myself pushing even harder, constantly striving to prove I'm competent. Okay, so again, this is that humble brag thing. Like she's saying how great of a worker she is. She pushes herself so hard, and she's gotten validation from people. Like I hardly ever got validation from people. I just did what I thought was right, and I did things to the best of my ability, regardless of if anyone validated me or not. I do things because it's the right thing to do, and I want to be successful. So the fact that you're getting validation, again, that's a very privileged position you're in, and she doesn't even know that. At the same time, Gen Z are told that we're lazy, entitled, and work-averse, and pressure to prove otherwise can lead to burnout and self-doubt. My burnout hasn't been laziness, but a survival mechanism, my body forcing me to slow down in an environment that demands constant performance. Again, you're a content creator for a nonprofit. You're not in a constant performance environment, okay? Again, go work at NASA, all right? Then I'll agree with you that you're in a place that demands constant elite performance. If you mess up one day, nothing bad's going to happen. All right. This isn't you don't need a survival mechanism. Again, she's kind of wanting things both ways where she's saying that she's not lazy. She's not like some of these Gen Z people. So we should respect her for not being lazy. And in fact, she works so hard that it leads to burnout. And so she wants the kind of victim status of being someone who's incredibly hardworking, that it's so hardworking that it's led to her being burnt out. It's like, okay, well, a lot of people would love to be working hard and being successful. So maybe it's just your own perspective. Next paragraph, she says, Gen Z isn't just facing pressure to hold down a job, but also the bigger question of what career path to take, settle for security or risk it all to chase our dreams. Like those are binary choices. Like that's not, again, some perspective. If you would talk to older people, learn from history, learn about human nature a little bit, you would realize it's not one or the other. Okay. You can do one of those at one point in your life. You can do another at a different point in your life. You can do both of them sort of halfway at the same time. These aren't binary options. All right. We're bombarded by messages on social media. Why are you listening to social media? That's your problem. Get off social media. It's about to get worse with the social media stuff here. That we have more opportunity than ever, but this often feels like a burden, the too much choice paradox. Okay, so again, have some perspective. Imagine growing up during the Great Depression or almost any other time in history, okay? Where, even as recently as I would say the 70s or 80s, and even if you live in certain geographies, you could feel that even today, where you almost have no options. There were times in our past where kids growing up, they're like, all I can do is go work in the mine or in the factory that my dad and my granddad and my great granddad all worked at because there's nothing else here. The only way I can make any money and survive and maybe have a family someday is I got to go work in the mine for 12 hours a day and get black lung, or go work in the factory and put my life on the line every day. Like, those people had truly limited options. All right. You could say. Now, is the too much choice paradox real? It is. Okay. That's an actual like economics thing, that when we have too many choices, we actually get frozen and don't know what to do. But again, like, think of the privilege that you have, that you live in a time and a place where you have all these options and all you need to do is just go try some. And yet you're so scared that now you blame that we have too many choices. Well, before, if you didn't have enough, you would have blamed that. Well, there's no options here. I don't know what to do. I have no way to move up in the world. And now that you have 100 different ways of moving up in the world, you're complaining about that too. It's like, you notice how you get to be the victim no matter what. Okay? This is the way that young people's brains work, is if things don't go well, it's because I'm a victim. If things are going really well, I don't want to be perceived that I have all these advantages, so I'm going to create a situation where I'm also a victim. And so you get to be a victim both ways. That's what happens. The expectation that we must maximize our potential heightens anxiety, leading us to feel like failures if we don't. I relate to what clinical psychologist and author of Generation Anxiety, Lauren Cook, describes as the Taylor Swift effect, the constant comparison to successful figures online. That's stupid. Okay? If that's what you're doing, then you're insane. You're a crazy person. That's like when I was a kid and I was a basketball player. Like, that would be like me thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going into deep depression because I can't be like Michael Jordan. Like, why are you comparing yourself to that level of success? I could have never been Michael Jordan. You will never be Taylor Swift. Okay? Why in the world would you want to compare yourself to those people? You can admire them. You can respect them. You can go to their concerts or their basketball games. You can cheer for them. You can spend money buying their albums or buying their merchandise. You can be a part of that world, but why would you want to copy them? The constant comparison to successful figures online. Like, you don't even know them. Why would you want to be striving to be like them? Now, you should want to strive to be successful. You should want to be, able to achieve things in your life and reach certain milestones and all that stuff. But like, trying to be a billionaire like Taylor Swift or Michael Jordan, that's insane. Why would you do that to yourself? But when you're addicted to being on social media, like I think this young lady is, well, that's what you do. And the solution is simple. Get off of it. Stop looking at, I'm not saying it's not reality, because Taylor Swift and Michael Jordan are real people who've accomplished real things, but like, the majority of that is not reality. So trying to compare yourself to things that aren't reality, that's a giant waste of your time, and it's what's causing your mental health problems. This comparison fuels the belief that if we're not monetizing our passions, we're failing, creating an impossible standard that leaves many of us feeling demoralized. I feel this pressure firsthand. So this idea of monetizing your passion, I don't understand that. I don't make anything from the things I do. So, but I still do them. Why? Because I have a higher purpose than that. I figure out other ways to put a roof over my head and make money and, pay my bills and all that stuff. But the things I'm doing like this, the writing that I do on the side or the videos I make or anything, like, I don't make any money from this. So why do I do it? I'm not monetizing any of this. If people want to give me money, they certainly can. But like, I don't make anything from this. So why do you do things? If you're doing things just for money, like, yeah, you're going to be miserable. You can get away with it. There's if you can make money and just not be attached to the thing you're building or creating or selling or whatever it is, hey, all power to you. But you can also be you can feel successful by just doing good things in the world that, again, teach people, inform people, entertain people. You can come up with a variety of ways that may not make any money, but that you can feel good about yourself because you did something you think is important. So again, Who's putting this pressure on you? She says, the belief that if we're not monetizing, like, why would you think you have to make money on everything? How, I just went on the biggest hike of my life the other day. I didn't make any money off that. I teach myself to play music and I write songs. I don't make any money off that. Why do I do these things? Well, because I enjoy them. Because I feel like I'm successful when I push my body or my mind to those levels. Maybe I can contribute something interesting to the world in some way. That's, again, not tied to money, but like, we do things all the time that aren't monetized. So why would you even think that? This makes no sense. This is where I really started struggling to get through her article. When she says, I feel this pressure firsthand, she said, while building my loneliness awareness platform, the Lonely Club, I've worked hard to avoid tying my self-worth to its success or turning it into a source of income. The pressure to turn my passions into profit still looms, and the constant struggle between pursuing meaningful work and financial stability is exhausting. Financial security feels elusive for many in my generation, even with a full-time job. I constantly fear it could be taken away. The pressure to save, sacrifice downtime, and work overtime to counter this uncertainty is exhausting. Yeah, that's normal. You're not special. This isn't unique to you. This is what everyone since the beginning of time has always done. All right? The basics of economics is we live in a world of scarcity. There isn't everything for everyone at all times. So you got to figure out, what do you care about? What are you willing to delay gratification for? What are you willing to save and sacrifice for so that you can achieve whatever type of happiness you want in the future, as well as maybe some right now? You got to figure all that out. And when you think saving and sacrificing your downtime or having to work overtime is something unique to you, go talk to people. Learn from people's experiences. Talk to grandparents. Read books about people from history. This is what everyone has always done. It is nothing unique to Gen Z or millennials or anyone else, under 30 or whoever we're talking about here. It's so crazy that people have no perspective of the world. This idea of financial security too is you have to think of financial security on a much longer timeline. Okay? You're 26 years old. You can't be thinking of financial security this year. That's not, God bless you if it works out for you that way, but that's not how it works out for almost anybody. Okay? My whole family, everyone I've ever known, like, it took years and years, decades to get to a place where you felt like you had some extra margin, some extra freedom, that you weren't constantly under the stress of paying those bills, that you had your bills covered and you had extra that you could do something fun with, or you could save for retirement, or you could move somewhere else, or like whatever you want to do. That takes years. Okay? It's not a financial security problem for a 26-year-old. That's something you worry about when you're in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. Okay? Like, you have to plan for that. You have to think ahead and have a longer timeline for that. The other thing is, she's 26. She said she lived with her boyfriend. That should alleviate a lot of this pressure. After all, two people working together is easier than one person working by herself. So part of being in a relationship, especially a married relationship where you're truly committed for the long term, is your stress levels, at least for me, have diminished to almost nothing. I have no stress in my life because I have my spouse, who is an incredibly hard worker, who has spent many, many years developing what she does. And so she now makes a lot of money. And so it affords the two of us to, try different things in our work, to, again, explore other options in, again, kind of career wise. I did the same thing for her when I had a good steady paycheck and she wanted to try some things. Like, when you have two people, it alleviates that stress you're talking about, your anxiety, because you're like, well, we have two brains now trying to solve this problem instead of just me. Well, that's a great feeling. So if you're still feeling insecure, maybe you need to be with the right partner so that the two of you can team up and work together to solve these kinds of problems, because I don't understand what the struggle is. What are you so depressed and anxious about? You can solve these problems. You can solve them by yourself, but you definitely can solve them if you have someone with you who loves you and you love them back. You can work together on this. I don't understand. It's very confusing. But then I just can't let this slip by, this lonely club idea. while I'm building my loneliness awareness platform. Okay, so you're anxious and depressed and apparently lonely, which I don't know how you're lonely. You live with someone who loves you. Like you shouldn't be lonely at all. If you have problems making friends, well, maybe that's something you need to work on. And you're not going to work on that by sitting behind your computer in your stretchy pants and baggy sweatshirt and staring at a screen in the middle of the night, like developing an online club. Like if you're truly lonely, again, you should check your relationship with your boyfriend that I, I, I would assume would alleviate some of that loneliness. But if you feel like you need more connection, well, go out and do something. Okay? You don't need to be online developing an online platform for other lonely people. You need to go be around actual people. That would be a way to reduce your loneliness, which would also reduce your depression, which would also reduce your anxiety, which would also reduce your stress. All of those things would be better if you're around other people, at least people who you like and have the same kinds of interests and values that you have. So just the self-absorption here, this I have to always focus on me, that I'm lonely, I'm anxious, I'm depressed. You've got to get outside of yourself. That's the problem. When I've in my life have been the most frustrated, I wouldn't say I've ever been depressed, but when I felt down and just unhappy about things, it's usually related to career things. I always got myself out of it by being proactive, by going out and doing more stuff, by being around people, by creating more, by doing more projects, by being involved in more stuff, because that's where the opportunities are. Go be a part of stuff. And my anxiety or whatever I have had in the past goes away. I don't sit and dwell in it in a lonely club. Again, you're doing this to yourself. Stop living inside your own head where all you do is think about yourself all the time. Go out and do some things. I'll talk about more about that here in a second, because she has some solutions and I'll offer you mine. She says, it's like I'm stuck in survival mode where the focus is on keeping everything afloat and anything beyond that feels like a luxury I can't afford. Again, keeping everything afloat. She has a full-time job. She has her own place to live. She has someone who loves her. And she feels like, I'm just barely keeping everything afloat. I mean, have some perspective, please. This doctor agrees, saying that despite being the most educated generation in history, Gen Z is financially the worst off. The worst. Really? Okay. Struggling to afford housing, education, and even the sense of stability that should come with adulthood. Again, you have to think of it on a longer timeline than that. If you think you're 22 and you're now, a college grad and you can go afford a $400,000 house and have this stability and raise a family, like, how about you give it a little bit of time? How about you work on that for several years? Maybe by the time you're 30, you'll be in a place that you can feel like you can afford those things, because that's how most of us have always done it. All right. I've known nobody who at age 22 or 24 or whatever, like, was financially stable. Okay. Like, we're all young. You're learning. You got to get used to the world a bit. And then over time, with a spouse, usually, you can develop some savings. You can invest in things. You can afford to explore other options in your career and in the things you want to place value in. Give it a longer timeline. I didn't own a house till I was 32. Okay, we were married. We were highly educated, successful people. We couldn't afford it, so we didn't, and it was fine. We've had a great life. It's no problem. All right, you'll be able to get to those things later. Don't panic about it now. Give yourself a longer timeline. Many of us are left feeling drained by the daily grind, wondering what's the point if our efforts will never pay off to reach milestones like owning a home or retiring. Again, you got to think of a bigger perspective, and you got to have an historical perspective. People in the 100 years ago didn't think, oh, I'd like to retire at 65. They assumed they would have to work until they died. Because that's just the way it was. So, or they would have to go live with their children, and their children would have to take care of them. Okay? So that was normal. The fact that you might think, I'd like to retire and, go on vacation all year and, have a sports car or what, that's not how most of human history existed. So when you think that's a necessity, yeah, it's nice. And all of us want to do that. We all want to retire and not have to work and all that stuff. But you have to think on a bigger time horizon. You have no perspective if this is what you're concerned about right now at age 26. Many of us have come to accept that we may never hit those all-important life moments. just really quickly, I was just thinking about this. Uh, when my parents were trying to buy a home right after they got married, and when I was a kid and all that stuff, in the late 70s and early 80s, the interest rate on a mortgage was like 18%. Okay? 18%. Today, you can get a mortgage. I just looked it up today. It's about 7. It's under 7. All right, so when you think, oh, it's so rough, yeah, the houses were cheaper back then, but you're also paying way more in interest. So like, there's always this balance, and again, you have to have some historical perspective where you're like, uh, oh, things are so unique and unfair now. It's like, yeah, would you want to pay 18% on your mortgage? No, so deal with it. You can also think of it. I moved around a bunch when I was a kid, and even as an adult, I've moved. I must have lived in, I don't know, 15 different places in my life. So is my wife. And so many of those moves were because we just needed to, we went somewhere for a job or where there was more opportunity. So if you're in a place where you can't afford something, maybe you should look to move to somewhere where you can. So for example, my parents' home back in our smallish town where I grew up, I have no idea what it would sell for, maybe $200,000 or something like that. I don't even know if it would be that. And it's a big, nice house. But back there in a small town, that's what you can get for $200,000. That same house, if it were in my neighborhood right here, it'd be $1 million house. Okay, because I live in a big city and things are more expensive in the big city. So if you're like, I can't afford any housing, everything's too expensive here. There are places in the country with all sorts of opportunity, especially if you are a remote worker, which sounds like she might kind of be, or at least could potentially be. There are places you can move where things are cheaper and you can start a family earlier. You could buy a house earlier. You can do those things. Yeah, you got to leave the big fancy city and you're not going to be able to go to brunch with your girlfriends and all this. Yeah, that's the way it goes. So what do you want? If you want those things, put yourself in a situation where you can maybe get those things. If not now, fine. Sometime in the future, but you got to plan for it. You can't just be living in eternal stress thinking the world is unfair towards you, because that's just not the case. She continues, for me, financial insecurity fuels anxiety, and I isolate myself further, afraid of burdening others with my struggles. Again, oh, you're such a good person. You don't want to burden other people, but you went and wrote a whole article about it. All right. Despite being constantly online, Gen Z is often labeled the loneliest generation. I scroll through Instagram longing for the close-knit friendships others seem to have, feeling detached, stuck in my own head, and always on the outside looking in. Life's demands often get in the way of forming meaningful connections, leaving me feeling isolated. For me, socializing can often feel like a tick box exercise, something I do out of obligation rather than genuine connection. The struggle to balance personal identity, work, and relationships leaves many of us feeling overwhelmed. The pressure to have it all is relentless. Okay, so the fact that you're scrolling through Instagram longing for close-knit friendships, like, why in the world would you do that? That's so ridiculous. My brain can't even comprehend why you would do that. If you want close-knit relationships, go be a part of close-knit relationships. And even though you feel like, when she says socializing feels like you're just checking boxes, well, first of all, maybe that's a good step. That maybe you just need to go through the habit of making friends with people for a little while, because then who knows what could come of it. Maybe you develop a real friendship. Maybe you develop a real excitement that you can't wait to see your new friend on Friday night and you go to the movies, or like whatever you people do. Like maybe it starts out as a chore, but it becomes something you actually enjoy, and now you have a lifelong friend out of it or something. This idea of feeling detached and stuck in my own head, because you are in your own head. All you're thinking about is yourself. You developed a lonely club for yourself. You scroll through Instagram by yourself. All your focus is on you. Stop doing that. Focus on other people. Go do things. Be active. Be a part of things. And most of this will fade away because your perspective won't be on you anymore. Go care about some other people for a while. Go develop a new hobby. Do something. But, when all you do is think about yourself and how lonely you are and how anxious you are and how depressed you are, yeah, you're just perpetuating it. The more you think about something, the more it becomes reality. So if that's what you think, that's who you are. If you're a positive person, positive things will emerge in your life because you'll be aware of them. You'll see them. If you're a negative person, you're a depressed person, anxious person, that's all you're going to see because that's all you think about. It shapes your perception of reality. So change this inside, and you can think about it differently. The pressure to have it all is relentless. Who in the world thinks they can have it all? I mean, I, that doesn't make any sense. No one has it all. And the people who do, good for them. But that isn't me. And it's probably not you. So, I wish I were 6'4" and looked like Tom Brady and, made the money that Tom Cruise has made. And, I wish I was all those. I wish I had it all in that way. Like, I don't have any of that stuff. And you know what? I'm totally fine. I don't care. My life is my life. Your life is your life. We can deal with what we have, and we can look at the positives of what we have if we're willing to open our eyes and see them. You have a good job. You have a roof over your head. You have someone who loves you. What in the world? Isn't that it all? That's it. You have it all. How about you just focus on that and be happy and grateful for it? And then who knows? Anything else that comes your way, holy cow, what a cherry on the sundae. That's an extra blessing I wasn't even thinking about. And then you can share your gratitude with other people maybe, because you've been so abundantly blessed in your life that you have a job, that you have a roof over your head, you have someone who loves you. I don't even know what else would you want? You have it all. How about just be grateful for it? Last section is about finding support. One positive is that Gen Z are more open to talking about their mental health with less stigma. Yeah, no kidding. You talk about it every single day. However, this openness doesn't erase the external pressures we face. This doctor says, the rise in mental health struggles within Gen Z reflects both real challenges and their increased willingness to seek help. Coping mechanisms, whether therapy, medication, or self-care routines, offer relief, but are rarely a complete solution. For me, creating the Lonely Club has been a lifeline. Because you like being lonely. That's what it is. You think that works because you actually want to be lonely. That's the reality. Sharing experiences, meeting like-minded people, and realizing I'm not alone has helped me feel less ashamed of my struggles. What experiences? It's an online community. So what experiences are you sharing? Are you just telling stories with each other? Or are you actually going and having experiences? Because from what it sounds like, it's just a social media platform. Meeting like-minded people. You mean talking to them online? You mean texting each other? Or meeting them, like seeing them face to face and having a meal with them? Or doing an activity with them? I don't know. She doesn't say, but I doubt she's actually doing those things. You know why? Because the next line, therapy, journaling, yoga, and practicing mindfulness have also given me tools to manage my anxiety. Okay, what do all those things have in common? Therapy, journaling, yoga, practicing mindfulness, and being part of an online lonely club. Anyone guess what those things all have in common? You can do all those things by yourself, or at most with one other. All you need is the therapist, let's say, one other person. But you're not in a community. You're not sharing things with other people. When you're doing yoga, you're not having deep conversations. You're just working out by yourself. When you're journaling, you're by yourself. If you want to improve your mental health, if you want to be less anxious, less depressed, less stressed, feel more engaged with life, you have to go be a part of things. If you're lonely or any of those things, go join a gym, join a church, join a book club, go volunteer at a senior citizen center, go volunteer at a preschool, go volunteer at a hospital, go do something. Go learn a hobby with a bunch of other people. Do something. You doing therapy, journaling, yoga, mindfulness, and being part of a social media platform, that is not going to help you, okay? Or if it does, it's going to just dull or numb the actual underlying problem, because it's still going to be there. You're just coping with it now, okay? When what you should do is fix the underlying problem by doing some of those things I just mentioned. Be a part of your own life. Go do things. But systemic change is just as crucial. Of course, it's going to come back to, what does she want out of this? More accessible mental health support. You don't think mental health is accessible? Everyone does mental health stuff now. It's everywhere. What are you talking about? Oh, what she really means is financial incentives for young people and spaces for open conversations about mental health are essential, meaning she wants people to pay for it. Maybe it should be part of what your business pays for with your health insurance or something, that you should be able to, have these things covered for you. Maybe the solution isn't to push ourselves harder, but to change how we think about success, mental health, and what it really means to thrive in an uncertain world. Yeah, no kidding. That's right. How you think about these things. Right now, you think about all of these things as bad, as depressing, as anxiety inducing, as stressful, as lonely. Yeah, you have to change the way you think about it. You writing an article about how lonely and anxious and depressed you are isn't helping. You need to change that. You can do all the things I've mentioned in this short episode. I try my best to carry a little less weight on my shoulders. There's another humble brag like, well, I'm just carrying all this weight. I'm actually a really strong person because look at all the weight I'm carrying. But then I also want to be the victim for all the weight I'm carrying. See how that works? Reminding myself that having stability is something to be grateful for. Yeah, it is. You have everything you need. You're doing great. Embrace that. Maybe it's time to reprioritize friendships, connections, and looking after my mental health, accepting that I'm doing the best I can, and that's enough. Young people would do a great service to themselves if they took the phrase mental health and just removed it from their vocabulary. Because the first two things she says, reprioritize friendships and connections, that would change your mental health 180 degrees. So when all you're thinking about is your mental health, what you're thinking about is yourself. Instead of thinking about your own mental health, maybe think, how can I go provide some form of health, whether it's physical health, spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, to other people? Go help someone else. Stop thinking about yourself. Stop being so ungrateful for all of the advantages you have in your life. Because there are people in this world right now, in parts of the world, that would give anything, absolutely anything, to have a fraction of the life that you have. Again, you have a job. You have a roof over your head. You're not starving. Your house is not going to get blown up, because you're in the middle of a war zone. You have someone who loves you and you love back. What more mental health do you need? How about just be grateful for what you have? And then if you want other things in life, great. Just work for them. Be patient, have a longer time horizon, and develop relationships with people, either friendships or, in this case, your boyfriend or a future spouse, that you can work together with to achieve those long-term goals. That's all that it takes. So when she titles her article, I'm Gen Z, and this is why we're also anxious and depressed, this is what's happening, okay? It's because you guys just think about yourselves. When people say, oh, Gen Z is narcissistic, this is what we're talking about. All you're doing is focusing on your own thoughts, your own feelings, and how you think everything is stacked against you, when in fact, it's the opposite. The world has been so great to you. You live in such abundance. You live in such security that any little glitch, you guys panic and freak out and go, oh, I'm stressed and anxious and depressed now. It's like, no, you're just feeling something that everyone throughout almost all of history has always felt. So join the club. Welcome to reality. We've all been doing this a while now. So if you would like help, ask us. We'll help you with this. But you need to have some perspective, gain a little wisdom, gain a little maturity, and stop focusing on yourself so much. You'll be just fine. So at the end, when she says, maybe it's time to do these things and accept that I'm doing the best I can and that's enough. Yeah, you have the answer already. So just do that. And then you don't need to write any more articles about your mental health because you'll be fine. Just trust me, you'll be fine. All right, that's it. Sorry, I don't feel like I'm picking on Gen Z. I just need to help straighten them out a bit because this is what I've dealt with, in my teaching career. I've been around these young people for all these years, and I keep hearing the same things over and over. And the answer is very simple. It's right in front of you. Hopefully, I've given you something you can take with you. But whether it's Gen Z or millennials or the younger groups coming along, everybody just needs to stop focusing on themselves so much and start thinking about how you might serve other people. All that depression, anxiety, and stress, trust me, it'll go away and it'll get directed towards something much more productive and helpful for those around you. So give it a try. Thanks for watching. See you next time.